Naomi's Place, East Franklin Street, Richmond, Virginia. Following Naomi's instructions, Mulder had driven along the I-95, then taken exit 74B. As he turned onto the corner of 25th and Franklin, he heard Naomi telling him they'd almost reached their destination. He grinned when he realised there was a certain attraction nearby he'd visited not so long ago. "Hey, you're close to East Main Street. That's where the Edgar Allan Poe Museum is." "Never been there," she admitted. "Perhaps I could take you sometime," he offered. "I'd like that," she replied sweetly, and then pointed to a large building just in front of them. "This is it, 2501 East Franklin Street." Mulder stared in amazement when he saw it was a luxurious penthouse condominium. "Wow!" he exclaimed. "You live here?" "Well, actually, my cousin arranged for me to stay here, and is helping me pay the rent, as it's quite expensive," Naomi explained. "Yeah, I can imagine," he replied, staring in awe. "Wish I had a cousin like yours," he joked. He would have liked to know just how much it did cost each month to live in a place like this, but felt it was rude of him to ask her. "You can use the secure parking garage," Naomi pointed out, to which she obliged. After entering the designer-decorated lobby, they took the elevator up a few floors and stepped out onto a balcony. Mulder felt a cool breeze from one of those old-fashioned fans, and when he looked up above him, noticed the ceiling was made of pine wood. "Beautiful," he commented. "The ceilings are all like that," she told him. Reaching for a key, she said, "Penthouse 4, this is mine." On entering, Mulder was met by even more elegance, and started to seriously consider the possibility of persuading Scully to move into somewhere like this with him. "Please, allow me to give you a guided tour," Naomi suggested, eagerly, noticing how his eyes were widening in amazement. "That'd be nice," he replied, interested to see what this place had to offer. "But then I must phone Scully." "Oh, sure," she said flippantly. Making sweeping gestures around the room with her hands, she told him, "Well, where we are right now is the entrance lounge."
Oh.
It was very chic and modern, with white painted walls connected to a circular wall, which was a light mustard colour and swept around into a long hall. Hanging up were some beautiful Japanese prints, one displaying a bird of paradise and the other a tiger made from the finest silks. Also adorning the wall were Japanese lanterns glowing with candlelight. In the centre of the room was a white leather sofa with two pale green circular-shaped chairs made of the same material, and a circular mahogany coffee table on a pinewood floor. She led him along the hall and into the main lounge, which was of a similar style, only this room had large windows and a sliding door leading out onto a private balcony. Mulder also loved the fact she had an old-fashioned fireplace, even if it did seem out of place with the rest of the modern decor. He then noticed a small spiral staircase in the corner and commented on it. "That leads up to the bedroom," she said, and quickly added, "There's a bathroom at the end of the hall." Leading him into another room beyond the staircase, she said, "As you can see, this is the kitchen. Would you like a coffee?" "Yeah, I'd love one," Mulder replied. Sitting down on a black leather-curved stool, he glanced around the area, noticing it was unlike the rest of the rooms. This one was in a square design with pale tangerine-painted cupboards and drawers, covered with the cream-brown tiled worktops situated all around the edge. The lighting was much more modern, with dark orange lampshades hanging from the ceiling. Once again, the flooring was of the same pine wood he'd seen throughout this penthouse. "Thanks for showing me around," Mulder said politely. "You have a very beautiful place." Then he realised he still hadn't asked his host the whereabouts of her phone. "But I really must call Scully now." As a matter of fact, he should have tried calling his partner as soon as he'd entered Naomi's place, but she'd seemed so keen to show him around the condo the moment they'd arrived. He'd felt he couldn't refuse her kind offer. Naomi had switched on the coffee percolator and was taking a couple of mugs from out of one of the cupboards. "In the lounge, the main one," she indicated. "Thanks." As she watched him leave the room, her heart sank. Part of her was really hoping that Scully wouldn't answer, and then he'd have no reason to leave so soon. Suddenly, she slammed one of the mugs down onto the worktop with such force the handle broke off in her hand, and it crashed onto the hard floor, shattering on impact. Shocked by her unintentional anger, she bent down and quickly retrieved the broken pieces. As she did so, her finger caught on a jagged edge. "Shit!" she exclaimed, seeing the blood ooze out from a fairly deep wound. At that moment, Mulder rushed into the kitchen. "What happened?" he asked her, showing concern. "Cut myself," she replied, whilst throwing the broken pottery into a trash bin. Mulder walked her over to the sink and held her hand under cold running water till the bleeding had stopped. "Better?" "Much," she replied with a smile. "Do you have band-aids?" "Upstairs in the bathroom cabinet," she said, gesturing towards the staircase with a nod of her head. "Okay, no problem," he replied, heading out of the kitchen. He found the medicine box and was making his way along the landing when Mulder noticed another room that she hadn't mentioned during his guided tour. After trying the handle, he discovered it was locked. Suddenly he had visions of Bluebeard and the young wife who had been forbidden to ever enter the locked room, which had eventually revealed all of his previous wives, garroted and hung up on the walls that were dripping with their blood. Grinning to himself, he started back down the staircase. "Coffee's ready," she called to him as he entered the room. "Here's your med kit," he said. Taking out a band-aid, he placed it on the wound and pressed lightly. "That should do it." "Thank you," Naomi said. "It was a really stupid accident," she added, wondering what on earth had caused her to get so worked up. "By the way, did you manage to get a hold of Dr. Scully?" "No," he replied, shaking his head. "She's not answering the phone either. That must mean she's on her way back, though, as I got the voice message telling me she was out of reach." He then noticed Naomi was giving him a slightly puzzled look. "Cell phone signal's pretty crap in our little neck of the woods," he stated. "Maybe if I try calling in about half an hour, hopefully she'll be home by then." "You know you're welcome to stay here as long as you want," she offered sweetly, handing him a mug. "That's very kind of you, Naomi," he replied. Noticing the time displayed on the kitchen clock on the wall opposite him, he added, "But it's getting very late, so if I can't get a hold of her on my next try, then I really ought to head for home, or she'll be wondering where I am." "Of course she will," she replied, a hint of disappointment in her voice. Mulder hadn't noticed and took a sip of the coffee. This is really good," he said. "Glad you like it," she replied, smiling. "But may I suggest we finish this in the lounge?" "Sure." Once seated on the sofa, Mulder started to feel extremely relaxed and laid his head back on the plush mahogany leather. "Boy, I could get used to this," he said dreamily. "You look tired," Naomi said, offering him a cushion as she seated herself on the chair opposite him. "Here, use this." He took it and placed it behind his head. "Thanks, only I really wasn't planning on sleeping here," he grinned. Finishing the coffee, he placed the cup on the table and almost immediately felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. Leaning back against the sofa, he shook his head a few times. "It's just I feel so worn out all of a sudden." The room then started to spin, which alarmed him somewhat. Glancing over at Naomi, who was now out of focus, he felt his head begin to pound and started to panic. "What the hell?" he said, now aware of the situation he was in. You've drugged me." "I'm sorry, Mulder," she said almost apologetically. "Why?" he asked, not quite believing this was happening. "You'll see, you Kaio," she said. "What?" Mulder replied, his speech sounding slurred. As his head lolled onto one side, it felt extremely heavy, and his sense of awareness was fading fast. But he could have sworn she'd just called him by another name, and it had sounded Japanese. "You know what that stands for?" she asked, her voice now mocking him. Now almost in a delirious state of mind, Mulder discovered he was having trouble keeping his eyes open. Realizing it was impossible to respond with words, all he could do was shake his head, which made him feel nauseous. "He who always gets what he wants," she replied, a touch of anger in her voice. As she spoke those words, Mulder felt himself sinking deeper and deeper, until finally the darkness descended. Crossing over, she knelt beside him, stroking his hair gently whilst murmuring softly, "Well, Yukayo, it's my turn, and you're going to have to play by my rules now." Leaving her captive passed out on her sofa, Naomi made her way into the kitchen. After replacing the bottle of sleeping pills that had been in her medicine box, she returned to the lounge and walked over to a large mirror hung just above the fireplace. She couldn't help laughing when she realised Mulder hadn't even noticed it there, yet he'd been the one so fascinated by them, and how they were connected to these Bloody Mary myths. This one in particular was enchanting, gilt-edged and adorned with beautiful carvings of golden dragons with piercing ruby-red eyes. A family heirloom, her mother had passed it on to her after she'd expressed a liking for it. However, during her childhood it had spent many years in a crate down in her parents' basement, until she discovered it and insisted on hanging it up in her bedroom. Then, when she was packing to go to America, she decided to take it with her. Now, almost in a trance-like state, she picked up a brush from off the mantelpiece and slowly began to stroke through her ebony hair. As she stared deeply into the mirror, At first it began to shimmer, as if the oval glass was now becoming translucent. Captivated by what was happening, she watched her image transform into a beautiful woman who looked like a slightly older version of her, only she had porcelain skin which seemed to glow in an aura of pure light. Suddenly her reflection altered again, revealing a horribly disfigured visage, lips savagely torn open from ear to ear, with blood trickling down its face. Even though the image was unable to speak through her mutilated mouth, Naomi was able to hear the words clearly in her mind.
"Thank you for returning him to me,"
Kuchisaki said.
"Now I'll be able to give my dear husband another precious moment he will never forget, and one which he so richly deserves."